Hello and welcome back. Welcome back. Let's be real. You've literally never been here before. Welcome to whatever this video is today, which is more DC and Danny Phantom fanfics because I read plenty of those and other fanfics, obviously, but still. But this time more because I don't think I talked about it in my last. I think I talked about it briefly in my last video, but I never gave like an actual recommendation, like one fanfic that had it, which is Anger Management Ship, which is what it's called. And for those who don't know what that is, it's the ship between Jazz and Jason. So I don't think because I talked about it briefly, but I don't think I ever recommended a fic where it had that pairing. So this one, for the first one is Persephone's Binding. Persephone's Binding is exactly like every it starts off exactly like how all the other kind of sacrificial bride kind of tropes go, right? Except Jason, this time is sacrificed to Jazz. And that works because Jazz is stepping in for Danny since she's, his older sibling until Danny can take over as king. So for now, she's queen, and she kind of takes over for him. So he was sacrificed to her technically, and their soul, because magical and everything like that. So his soul is bound to her, and it's the most immediately chill thing. She's like worried. She's like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" It's like, "Oh, that's a stupid question. You're not okay, obviously." And he's like, "This is oddly calm. Like this shouldn't be as calm." But so he's sacrificed to her, and she asked him, it's like, "Oh, how much do you know about magic and like the supernatural and everything?" And he doesn't want to give too much away because like he doesn't know who she is, he doesn't know what the situation. Well, he knows what the situation is, but but he doesn't know how deep he's in, basically. And she's like, "Oh, great. So don't have to explain that much." It's like, don't have to explain anything. World shattering. Welcome to welcome to the in between of all dimensions. Great. So I just love right off the bat how he's obviously suspicious because so the person like supposedly like he sacrificed her, and she's supposed to be like this entity, this unknown entity that might be evil and might kill him, but obviously won't and isn't, considering she's been nice and very sweet to him so far. And it kind of hits him immediately when she shows him to a room because like she's they're right now in a situation where can't really take him home because like they're in the infinite realms, which is in between dimensions, so they don't know really what dimension he's from, so they have to figure that out. But also kind of he's been sacrificed as a bride there, so his soul is now bonded to her, so they have to figure that out to unbind it. And so she's like, "Oh, so he's given a room to his own privacy and like for him to stay." And that's when it hits him immediately. He's like, "Oh my, wait a minute." It's like, this is every this is every trope ever. It's like, I'm sacrificed to an unknown entity that's supposed to be evil, and oh, surprise, it's actually a really beautiful woman who's very sweet and kind. He's like, and so he just immediately goes into the mode of like, I have to romance the hell out of her. Just immediately. He's like, I have to do this. Like, and I love that trope just for anything. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to do with Jazz. Like, it's whenever Jason is involved with anything like this, usually sacrificed, he immediately, like, he's suspicious at first, but then as soon as like he gets to be like, okay, I'm not gonna die, right? He immediately goes into, I have to now romance this. I have to romance you as hard as I can. Because this will be all of my trashy romance books coming true. Like, and I love that for him. Someone has to live in our delusions. Someone has to make them come true, all right? So he immediately goes in romance mode and immediately is like, I have to woo her immediately. And he meets Danny kind of later on, and they spar too. So he meets her, and they also have like a talk about her. Him and Jazz have a talk about dying, basically, him dying, and her. This conversation comes up. Everyone's dead here, so fantastic, right? So they're talking about their past. So it's a very sweet moment, and it's very cute overall. All right, next one is the dead end call. This one was based on the trope that it's a one shot, which I wish expanded more on so badly, but and many people have their own interpretations of it after the one shot on Tumblr. But the dead end call is basically it's based on the trope of the Justice League not helping with the ghost problem and Amity, right? So, and usually in fanfics we get that, oh, they just ignored the call because someone, which is what this trope is. It's like someone just kind of ignored the call and dismissed it as prank because ghosts aren't real, and even when they bring up uh the one ghost that they do actually know, which is Dead Man, he's kind of magic's involved there, and people can really only see him with magic, and so they aren't really like ghosts from infinite realms. Which so they immediately kind of just dismiss it because oh, it's just a prank or whatever. And but they added a twist to this, which I really liked. Is it? What if like the ghosts like because the trope is like ghosts interfere with technology like a lot. So what if really like they couldn't even place the call in the first place? Like no one who like is a ghost or I think ecto contaminate, which is like practically all of them, could ever place that call because the technology would mess it up until you wouldn't be able to hear them anyway. As that's what it's based on. So we're with Hal. So we're with Hal. He's at the I'm not the call center, but honestly, like it's kind of what it is. He's on phone duty, I guess you could say, and he gets a call, and the one calling is Danny, with an I. So girl Danny, and she's the one placing the call, and she's she can't say anything because it'll you can't hear her anyway. It'll mess up it, and so what she does is she just repeats the words back to him. So whatever he's saying, he hears back, but she splices his sentence to mean what she says. So Hal's hearing himself, like his own voice and his choppy sentences. And so he's confused and is like, kind of frustrated. He's like, oh, this is a stupid prank. And so he ends up hanging up. And then Zatanna comes along because it's, it's her turn, right? And she gets the same call. And Hal just tells her, like, oh, just hang up. I got the same one too. And she's confused at first, but she kind of not almost immediately. She eventually catches on that they are only able to repeat the word, like her words and like her sentences back to her, but like chopped up to like mean what she says. And so she eventually catches on to her, and so Zatanna starts asking more questions like, okay, well, do you need help? Like, oh, like how many, like what's the situation? Like how many villains? Like what are they, are they armed? Like what are they armed with? How many, do they have hostages? How many hostages? Like where are you? Like they're asking all these questions. And the more that she answers, the more dire the situation, like they understand the dire the situation it is and how grim it is. And so when they finally have the location, the first one there is Flash. They send the first one there because they understand that the situation is awful and that they really need help. And it's confirmed when Flash eventually gets there, and he's the first one to see it, obviously. And he's like on a separate call, and he's talking to everyone. He's like, it is a war zone here. Like there are tanks and like everything is destroyed. Like we need medics, we need a team. Like it is a war zone. It's awful, and it just really sinks into everyone because like especially since they like found out like on the call, because as they were talking, they're talking to like a child, because you know what Danny is, like they're talking to a child, and you know they so and that with what they learned like from Flash later on, it really sets like it just paints a grim picture for them of like, oh, this isn't like this isn't great. And so you know Zatan tells her like, okay, I need you to stay with Flash, like he's gonna help you, like he's gonna be like you're gonna be okay. And with that, like everyone, it's like all hands on deck there, especially because you know what Flash said, like it looks like war zone, like everything's going on and it's still actively happening. So it's like all hands on deck with that one. And so everyone just kind of immediately rushes off, and Hal's like, I have to be there because he feels regret, you know, he's like, because he just dismissed it. And he's like, I have to be there, you know, because like, he feels bad. You know, if Zatanna wasn't there, they would have never gotten help. And it's, it's, I like it though. It's very sweet. But again, it is a one shot, which is so, I swear, all the good ones are one shots or they haven't been updated in like 3 years and never going to be updated again. It's never going to happen, but it's very good. Let's see. Phantom Pups, the Bat Hound Chronicles. This one is where Danny's like, they see Clockwork sees like, and everyone like he needs a break, right? He's at work, he's stressed, like he needs a break, he needs a vacation. So they send him. So Clockwork sends him somewhere. It just happens to be the DC universe. Oh my god! So, but he ends up in the body of a puppy. So now he's kind of just as a puppy, which like okay, fine, great. You know, he's a puppy now because, and you know, vacation. So he's supposed to relax and just kind of let this ride out, where he lives the full life, you know, as a dog till he dies. Which, when he dies, is when he wakes up. I guess you like it is really when he wakes up, right? So he dies there, but it's also like he's ejected from that universe back into our own, and summer's over, so now he's, you know, but sucks to suck because he gets involved in you know now you know, and he's a puppy, he can't really do anything, so he's put into a dog fighting ring. So nice, how great for him to first start out with. And he's got like, I like how he has his own little puppy, like little smaller puppies to look after too. He's looking after them, you know, a litter of puppies that can't defend themselves. And eventually, though, it's busted. The legal ring is busted because, of course, it is. It's, you know, by Batman himself, and this is like before Robin, so it's just him. And so that's when Danny almost like cements himself with Batman. So obviously so Bruce takes him in, and because he always frequently broke out when, you know, Bruce was off doing Batman things, because he always frequently broke out no matter what they did to be with him as Batman. They're like, all right, well, we can't stop you. We might as well equip you with, you know, essentials, right? So he's now Bat Hound. He's also named Aether, obviously, but he's now Bat Hound. And so he's got little utility belts, little treats, and little med kit because Bruce and likes to take stupid risks, and so he's out there with him. And then because we go through the whole thing, right? So we eventually see Dick come in, and he immediately takes a liking to Dick, and he, you know, follows him around the house, like the mansion, and, you know, cheers him because like his parents did die. So, you know, and this is where, you know, Dick's just exploring the mansion, and that's when obviously he finds the clock and he finds the Batcave. And that's when he's like, oh, like, you know, Dick's obviously amazed, like, oh, did you know about this? And that's when he stands in front of his like little case with the suits, and that's when he's real proud about it too. He stands there in front of it because like that's where, you know, his Bat Hound suit is, and he's like, oh my god, like you're like so then he, becomes Robin because of course he does, and then eventually does, leave and become Nightwing, whatever, right? So we go through the whole thing with all of them, and it's sad that chapter. Okay, it's because he's old now, right? And so now we have everyone here. Like it's up to we're all the way up. We caught up now with Damien's here. He's settled in, and he hasn't known Damien long, but he knows it's his time. So it's the end of the summer is basically how long the vacation is supposed to last. So he's old now. As an older dog, he knows it's his time. Clockwork's come to get him, and to them it's his death, and it really is his death. It's and that's when he gathers everyone around, and so they're all around him. And he gives them one last present, which is a different puppy, and he hands him to Damien. The puppy is future is Dan, right? So it's I forgot. I was supposed to say I'm like it's future Danny, but then I'm like it's Dan. I forgot that was his name. So he so it's Dan, and he ends up handing him to Damien, and Damien obviously names him Titus. Dan's there because Cocker explains that he's there because parole, basically. This is his parole. It's just being here as a dog. So, um, so now that he's like, it's like handing off a torch, basically, and I love it. So he then lays down, and like all his family around him, Dick's crying because like obviously he's looking on that dog since not really a puppy, but he's known like, since he was a kid, so and that's when his vacation ends. That's when he wakes up, and um, Jazz, Sam, and Tucker, they're all around him, and they're asking like, "Oh, like how was your vacation? Like what was it like? Whatever, right?" And then we go back to Dan, right? Him as Titus, and his days spent with Damien, and that's when we find out he isn't the only one there. For a little vacation. Because soon after who's joining him is Danny. Again, with an I. Jesus. With an I. Danny, she's joining him. But she ends up going to Dick. And Dick finds her because she was. It's basically, it's like medical leave she's on there. It's like, so she has to be like, because it's like, she was medically kind of not doing so great. Destabilizing and everything. So they're like, we're just gonna, So here's the life of a dog briefly for a couple minutes. So she's injured in an alleyway. The dog was already dead. So when she kind of entered that body, the dog was already gone because people thought it'd be funny to torture a little dog. And that's when Dick came along and found her. And so Dick ends up taking her in, and we love that. So she is with Dick, right? And soon all of them kind of join, like Jazz joins in. So she ends up going with Jason, right? She's back at like a little vacation. Like, so they're all puppies, right? So she's, as a puppy, she finds Jason as Red Hood, and she cements herself with him. And then Danny kind of learning, he learned like, okay, well, Dan has Damien, and like Dick has Danny, and Jason has Jazz. So he's like, okay, well, now that he's now brought back again as a puppy, he's like, well, I'm gonna go with Tim. So he follows Tim outside. He's in a restaurant, and Tim notices someone's following him. He doesn't know who, so he ends up like fake dropping a coin into an alleyway and goes to pick it up, and that's when Danny kind of falls in the alleyway. And Tim's confused by this because he hears it first before he actually sees who's following him. So he's like, claws? He's like, and turns around, it's like, is that a dog? He's like, hello? And then he's like, he questioned himself. He's like, all right, was stupid. He's like, I know my dog, like the dogs in, our family are like, have an above average IQ, but like a regular dog doesn't understand what I'm saying. So it's like, were you following me? And like, obviously Danny, answers. And that's when we find out like Danny was actually, he has the back signal in like his fur on his chest, which I think is the cutest thing because it's, he was once Ace, and Tim ends up taking him back, and all of them are reunited together, and that's when he's named Ace again because it's a cute little thing. I love it. Very, it's very sweet and very heartwarming. Okay, next one. If you if you find a vigilante in the dumpster, which is exactly what's that. This is another one that has Jazz and Jason, right? But it's got DH Danny in this one. Okay, so yeah, so we don't know I mean, it's not that hard to guess, but in the beginning they don't outright say it, like why Jazz and Danny are in Gotham. But it's not really that hard to guess because that's like a classic trope of them running away to Gotham. So, you know, uh, Jazz and Danny, who's DH because um, things happened, weren't great. So now he's DH, and he has like a childlike mind too in this one, so he's not completely like the same Danny either. He's like almost like he's fully like a kid kind of, um but Jazz takes care of him, so they end up taking on like the whole like, okay, I'm a single mother, like, and you are my, like her son, right? So they end up fully taking that on, and Jason meets them as at first as Red Hood. Exactly how the title suggests is that Danny ended up finding him in their dumpster because he passed out and fell. And they took him to their apartment and Jazz stitched him up. And the first thing that Jason just wakes up to is Danny just all up in his business, just staring at him, just like kids know no personal boundaries whatsoever. So he's like, I found you in the dumpster. It's like his immediate response to that, he was like, funny, my mom said the same thing. Okay, Jason, we're not we don't need that. So that was their first ever meeting, and it's not really anything that was like it didn't get Jason like, oh, he wanted to stick around and find out more, but he just, because he's like, he didn't really think anything of it, right? He just kind of passed out, fell in the dumpster, right? He didn't think anything of it. Cool that they stitched him up, and then went about his day, right? He didn't think he would see them again until he crashed into his dumpster again. So the second, and for a third time too, like he keeps crashing into their dumpster, and Danny just keeps finding him. He's like, oh, hello. Like, so it's, so he's just noticed the dumpster man, like I should say the garbage man, like the dumpster man, because I mean, you're in their dumpster. But he also meets them as Jason. Um, he meets them as Jason after was it their second meeting as him meeting as Red Hood? I don't remember, because he's like sitting at their kitchen table, helmet off, like he still has the mask underneath. Because Danny offers like, "Do you want some cookies?" It's like, sure, okay. He just believes like, all right, sure, and goes in and has some cookies with him. So he ends up he ends up meeting Jazz because she owns a bookstore basically, and he goes there because he needs another copy of his book that he accidentally set on fire, and that's when he meets her. And he didn't think he would meet them again, but he also didn't think that either as Red Hood. And then he crashed their dumpster, and then he's like, why do I keep meeting you people? So he kind of looks more into them because he's like curious about them now. So, and he can't really help it, so he starts looking into them more, and come to find out, not through Jay, like we find as the readers, that the apartment building that they are technically in, like Jason starts to care for them too, but the apartment building that they're technically in is kind of magical. Like the magic's clearly involved, and it's almost like because it protects the people inside the building, right? And so people who want to live like a normal peaceful life, and they may or may not be like hiding from someone. They go there, and I say this because obviously Jazz and Danny, clearly they do, right? And the person who owns the building he cares about all his tenants, takes it very serious, and he's a very peculiar person. Is that kind of how he's described? And so he only finds Jason only really finds that out though through Constantine, because he mentions the name. He's like, oh yeah, I know that's like he. John's like, oh yeah, I know that. Like I know that name. Like he inherited something or whatever. Like in the magic world, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know, but it's very. So Jason learns that, and as he's learning about more about Jazz and Danny, who he's grown for, he's grown to care for like a lot. So he's really attached to them, and he doesn't really want any harm to come from them. But he's also wants to learn more about the tenants. He ran into one of them, and they were like an ex-gang member of something, and now they're on like the straight and narrow path, right? And he's married, turns out. So, and another one is siblings, right? The oldest is, I don't even remember how old he is. He's not, he's like 15 or something, but they're runaways from the system, right? So, and it's kind of sad, right? So we learned that they were taken in by this lady who, a social worker, there you go. She was a social worker, and she was trying to kill him, basically. Like he wouldn't do, like she wouldn't do anything to his little sister, which is great, but she was very clearly trying to poison him, like, so because the little sister doesn't know any better, and she revealed that when when they were, it was because Danny said like, oh yeah, we were playing around, and she said this is how the lady made it, and she was like pouring like bleach into the food, and it was like, oh, fantastic. Like, so the lady was clearly trying to, but they couldn't really say anything because she's a social worker. Who's gonna believe them over, like, and so they just kind of up it, they ran away hoping like that this social worker will never find them. And so now Jason's like, okay, well now I got a social worker to take care of. Like, he's like, well now I got a social worker to take care of. Fantastic. Because it was already on his list anyway when he was learning more about the siblings, because he clearly recognized their situation. He just didn't know who they were running from. And, he was just like, all right, got to figure it out to go after them. And um, so that building is very much like if you need hiding. So I'm like, it's like a beacon for them. Like if you need hiding, like that building, like it'll be there for you. You can hide. Um, how Nick? Let's see. Twin TWINcognito mode. TWINcognito mode is interesting because it's about so Danny ends up sucked into he's sucked into a clone of Tim, and he's now bound to that body, so he can't even really leave it at all. And then parts of his memories are kind of fuzzy. He like he like kind of knows who he is. He just doesn't remember what kind of landed him in this situation and how he got there, basically. So it's kind of what it is, right? So he landed there. He met Tim because Tim was there because he was taking out one of Roz's hideouts, because, like, of course I had to deal with that. So we skip the whole. I mean, we get glimpses back into it, but we see the program. He's like deprogrammed, basically, because the clone's body, I should say, at least had some triggers. So he was kind of deprogrammed out of that. So they set this up because at first it's just meant to like see how long they would notice that, oh, it just looks like Tim, but it's not really Tim, just to see how long it would take them to notice. For a while, they don't notice at all. So Danny goes and plays with Tim, obviously, and they don't even really try to hide it well, because they really don't. It's just like how long would it take for them to notice that like you're not, because so it's just Danny acting like kind of like how he kind of normally would. He's not like Tim, so he's acting like himself, and like the person's like he where Damien like kind of picks fights with him. He really is like, okay, well fine, I'll call you El Witwat or whatever it's called. Which is it means like it's like the sound of what the bat wings make. So he's basically calling him like flip flap. And Damien's always upset with that. And and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call you that. And like he runs to Jason, and Jason's like, what are you doing here? He's like, what? He's like, you didn't tell me that. And like, so they're very obviously like not hiding the fact, like he's not Tim. They're not hiding it. And like they're very clear not hiding the fact that this isn't Tim. So so they all kind of start to notice, kind of like one by one, like this isn't, I mean, some of them kind of already knew and they're in on it with them. Like Duke, he's already in on it with them. Barbara, it's definitely, they're good, right? They're already in on it, right? And so are Tim's friends. And they came up with a backstory for him, obviously, with Danny. They're just like, oh yeah, he was out on a mission for a couple of years, and he also has paddle boats. So they made up this whole background for him, for the others to see. So they're all gathered in the back cave. They're seeing it. So what they think is that during one of the little time displacement things happened, that Tim gained a twin through it. So now none of them have any memories of him, obviously, and so, but and it makes sense because the way they logic it out is like, oh, but to Danny, he's known all of them for years, and now they suddenly forgot him, so they all feel awful, but they even feel really worse that like now we have to pretend to know him, and that obviously sets Jason off. He's like, that's awful to do. So now none of them know how to like treat Danny because they're like, oh no, they're like, because they don't remember what their relationships were like. They don't know what Danny was like. So they're like, what were you? So they're like, oh no, especially with Jason, because like him and Tim have like a rocky kind of relationship. It's gotten better, but still. So he doesn't remember what his relationship was like with Danny, and the same with Damien. Rival to Tim, and he's like, I'm superior to you, right? And then with Danny, he's like, I don't know where we stand. It's confusing to everyone. And it eventually is like, it's very sweet too how it comes about it. It's like with Damien, Danny was always careful, didn't really lie to Damien either. And so Damien and Danny's relationship is like, because Danny just portrays that he's like, oh, he just has this duty to annoy him, basically, because like, that's what an older sibling does. And it's very it's very sweet, and they get into more shenanigans of just kind of replacing each other until they can be told apart. Well, they can't really be told apart, but like still, it's funny. Let's see, Mother of the Storms and her child, which is another DH Danny, because of course it is. But this time, because usually the one who ends up adopting is like Jason, which I love, but not the point. This time, the one doing it is Dick. So Dick ends up finding Danny. The first chapter is established something goes wrong. Danny's obviously a realist phantom. Doesn't go over well, right? He's in trouble. He's bleeding. He needs to hide, and so he's taken to the DC universe. And with that, Clockwork kind of sets him down. He leaves the note with him, right? And there's blood everywhere. So that's how Dick finds him, right? Just a toddler with blood everywhere and a note saying how much Clockwork kind of loves him and he'll come back for him. And Dick kind of immediately deduces, like, ooh, I don't think he's coming back for you because it kind of looks like he's real dead. And so he ends up taking it in, and it's very cute so far, if I'm gonna say so. I think it's very cute. Because it's just, he ends up taking him in, and he eventually gets him to trust him enough to take him back to the mission, because Alfred is obviously superior and is the expert. So he's like, I need help. You know, like, what do I do with a child? So, and they figure out, like, oh, to them, he's like, oh, he's a meta, but Danny obviously knows he's dead. That's when, because when they were like, oh, well, Duke's also like, he's like, oh, like me? It's like, yeah, he's also a meta. And he's like, oh, so Danny, like, I'm not like me. Like, I should say this is another one where Danny's also kind of childlike because he's regressed so much into, like, so he very much has this person that comes to the forefront of that. So it's very, it's very sweet and it's very cute so far, obviously. Some angst going on too, because they mistake him for, like, there's also another thing they can really do too, but they mistake him for Kryptonian, and it's like, he's not. But there's another fish like that too. Love the bow. It's funny to me. But anyway, that's all my recommendations for this episode. So until next time, bye.